China welcomes business and tech leaders from more than 100 countries and regions to Summer Davos. Hello, I'm Einar, and this is The Heat. More than 1,700 government and industry leaders gathered in China's coastal city of Dalian this week for the World Economic Forum's 15th annual meeting of the New Champions. This year's theme was Next Frontiers for Growth. Chinese Premier Li Qiang addressed the conference on Tuesday, stressing the importance of global cooperation and innovation to drive economic growth. Discussion centered on China's economy, artificial intelligence, and green technology.
China has long been recognized as sort of a very high growth and important consumer market. China is just really important to the world, and I think the world really is sort of depending on China to help the global economy kind of recover from some of the shocks that it's experienced over the last few years.
Well, for more now on the Summer Davos, let's bring in our panel. Joining us from Beijing is Einar Tangen. He's a senior fellow with the Taihe Institute and founder and chair of Asia Narratives. Also with us, Andy Mock is a senior research fellow at the Center for China and Globalization in Beijing. From Dalian, Changhua Wu is the chair of the Governing Council at the Asia Pacific Water Forum. And John Quelch is the executive vice chancellor of Duke Kunshan University. He also attended the forum in Dalian. Welcome to all of you. John Quelch, China's economy was a big part of the discussions that took place in Dalian. These talks, of course, taking place at a time when economies in both developed countries as well as developing countries are facing headwinds. But if we look at China, the World Bank raised China's growth outlook for 2024 from 4.5% to 4.8%. What was the message you heard from the delegates at Dalian?
Well, thank you very much, Anand. Premier Li made a very strong and bold presentation around the theme of new frontiers of growth. As you indicated, he focused on green technology, he focused on biomedicine, and he focused on artificial intelligence as three key pillars for new growth drivers. Not just within China, but within the global economy, because a large part of the theme, as you might expect at the World Economic Forum, was on China-led global cooperation in driving science and technology innovation. And there was, I think, an interesting underlying theme that suggested that some of the protectionist measures that legacy economies, the United States and Europe, have imposed on Chinese imports and collaborative research and so forth, that those are, in a sense, old-fashioned themes that are holding back global economic growth. And Premier Li, I think, boldly presented China as the leader in the free market economy.
And John, these, you mentioned three pillars, new growth drivers that you talk about. How much of a change is this for China as it charts its way into the future?
So China is very transparent through its five-year plan process, very transparent in terms of what its intentions and ambitions are. It has to be transparent because these messages from Beijing are then transferred down to the provinces and local governments who invest accordingly. And what we've seen, for example, Anand, in the area of green tech, is that in the so-called big three areas of photovoltaic solar cells, electric vehicles, and lithium batteries, Chinese companies, having been signaled by the government 10 years ago to drive those innovations, have in fact now become the major suppliers in the world economy of those products. So I think that gives you a sense of how determined the Chinese are to develop innovation that is addressing global pain points, in this particular case, climate change and carbon emissions. And that is really, I think, the main driver of the speech, as I took away from Premier Li, that China is here to deliver, to solve global problems.
Einar Tangen, talking about Premier Li's speech to the conference, he also emphasized China's commitment to further opening up. He said, Premier Li said, and I'm quoting him directly, he said, "Only through open interactions, exchanges and mutual learning can we keep pushing the boundaries of development and discover and open up new frontiers. In many ways, the depth of international cooperation determines the height of human development." Einar, what were your main takeaways from this conference?
Well, that was a counterpoint, obviously, to small yards and high fences, which China obviously does not believe in. There is a sense that the world has to go forward together. You're seeing a sharp division between the developed, previously mostly colonial states, and the rest of the world. China is relying more and more heavily on markets that are outside the traditional ones of Europe and the United States. And that is probably going to continue given the amount of sturm und drang that's happening in domestic politics, whether it's the US, UK, Europe, or anywhere else. So yeah, I think he wants to make sure that there is a positive message. The issues here are confidence and predictability. Right now, with things, especially all these elections, changes in policies, it is very hard for business people to invest because they don't know what's going to happen. He's trying to assure them at least that China will do its part. Remember, 30% of global growth last year came from China, and you can expect about the same this year.
Changhua, there were also calls in Dalian for increased international collaboration to address the challenges of energy transition, to make the move towards green energy, towards green technology in the battle against climate change. What can you tell us about this?
I think that all the number and evidence, as presented, shared in Dalian here at the Summer Davos, are always just fascinating, encouraging to see the progress is made already. All the milestones that China has been leading, has made. Pretty much China has been on a solid track or pathway to deliver the commitments in the last decade or so, because we started really to focus on new and emerging technologies and the industry there as well. If you look at renewable energy, look at, of course, AI, digital technologies, the modern machinery manufacturing, among others there. So China has been pretty much on the track to deliver that. So today, if you look at all the numbers, data as a particular, look at the renewable energy. So China has pretty much leading, contributing 50% of the global installation last year of renewable energy, particularly solar and wind. If you look at the sales of the EVs, and China probably contributed about 60%. If you look at the manufacturing production perspective, China has been contributing about maybe somewhere 70, 80, 90% of the industrial value chain contribution there as well. So China has been pretty much on the track to deliver more, which is really fascinating. Dalian offers an opportunity somehow on one side to re-examine the milestones, really to offer the confidence and also offer the experience and the cases there. But in the meantime, as we've been discussing here today as well, the bigger context there is getting more complicated, particular headwinds. Look at the geopolitical, geoeconomic challenges there. So more than ever, policymakers, business community need to somehow come together to really understand what the headwinds are, challenges are, and very importantly, how to work together in order to really overcome those headwinds and really accelerate the clean energy revolution there. At this moment, I think the case has already made. We have solutions. We have cost-effective, affordable solutions there. if we do not overcome the geopolitical, geoeconomic barriers there, it's going to be really, really hard for global community to deliver the climate commitments on one side to mitigate climate change, and very more importantly, actually, to figure out how to enhance our climate resilience. Those are the key topics actually pretty much examined here in Dalian in the last couple of days.
Andy Mock, of course, artificial intelligence also dominated those talks in Dalian at the Summer Davos. In fact, generative AI is expected to add between $2.6 and $4.4 trillion in annual value to the global economy. That's according to a report that was produced by McKinsey. How much of a game changer will AI be for the global economy?
Well, Anon, I think there's a lot of excitement and attention paid to generative AI, but there are other forms of AI that I think will have an even bigger impact on China's development and global development. So China has, of course, emphasized all types of AI, but in particular prioritized industrial applications, especially in areas such as so-called smart manufacturing or lights-out factories, where little, if no, human intervention is required. And I think this really, because we all humans live in the real world and not the digital world. So generative AI is primarily focused on creating text, images, audio that are all digital in nature, and some might call disembodied artificial intelligence. Whereas we see China's prioritization, again, I think this is very practical and pragmatic, is how do we use artificial intelligence to improve the lives of people around the world in a sustainable way. So I think this is very, very important. Related to this is advances in 5G, because we know that internet access, increasingly access to artificial intelligence, will be through some sort of mobile network. And I just want to share a couple of statistics on this. So according to Graham Allison at the Belfer Center at Harvard University, in 2022, China already had built 1 million 5G base stations compared to 100,000 in the US, and it had invested $50 billion in 5G compared to an authorized number of 1.5 billion in the US. And today, China has almost 4 million 5G base stations installed. And this is a vital new form of infrastructure, I think, that will lay the groundwork for new models of growth that we're only beginning to see and starting to imagine.
And Andy, that's 5G, but in terms of AI and the technology that calls for, where is China there? How much of a priority is developing new AI technology?
I think it absolutely is a top priority, Anon. So China, of course, aspires, I think is well on its way to being one of the global leaders in technology from a full spectrum perspective, whether that's life sciences, whether that's computing technology, whether that's material sciences, space exploration. And AI is generally considered what's called a general purpose technology, like electricity, like steam, that it powers every other form of innovation. So it, of course, can make information processing more effective. As I mentioned, with industrial automation, the integration of AI with robotics, we can build things more quickly, more cheaply, at higher quality. But it also has vital national security implications as well. And another part I want to touch on here, too, is this also points to an underappreciated form of technology that I think China leads in, and that's political technology. One of the areas I think that China has demonstrated enormous competence in is advanced conceptual thinking when it comes to political decision making. And artificial intelligence, I think, can play a very, very powerful role here as well. And that's something I would be paying more attention to as we look at how this AI revolution unfolds.
Yeah, and it's something we'd like to hear more about as well. Einar Tangen, CGTN's Chin spoke to Dora Liu. She's the CEO of Deloitte China. She talked about China's economy. Let's listen to part of their conversation.
China as the market and the economy is too big, too important, and too good to ignore. So that's the consensus. Definitely there are complexities, but compared with the complexity, the opportunities are much more. The reason behind why we were all so confident of China's economy is exactly as what Premier Li Qiang mentioned and pointed out. First and foremost, the mega size of a digital economy, the huge amount of user cases, and the innovation, pivotal, the power of innovation hub. And second is the talent pool. And third is China has been advocating the open door policy.
So, Einar, according to Changhua, more than 21,000 foreign investment firms were established in China. That's in the first 5 months of this year, and that's an increase of 17.4% year on year. So, listening to Premier Li's speech then, what he talked about China being open for business, I mean, is the message finally getting through that China is now definitely open for business?
Yeah, it's getting there. I mean, there's still little hiccups and things like that, and the government appears to be trying to iron them out. And that's what's really important. I mean, and I've noticed, everywhere I go, as offices where they were polite before are actually more polite and much more welcoming. They'll say something to me in English and things like that. But what she was pointing to is the reality. Where are you going to invest money these days? I mean, Europe is anemic. The U.S. is unsettled. There are other places, especially Southeast Asia, but if you're looking for a large mass of consumers, China is definitely where you want to be, and that's going to continue. And that was really the message taken away from there. I would like to add one other issue is that this was a very important window, bringing these people from 100 countries and bringing them together to see Dalian, to be in China, especially after so many years of COVID and isolation. Very, very important in terms of people-to-people exchange, because you can talk about the message, but it's much more impactful when you're actually seeing it.
John Quelch, China's economy grew by 5.3% in the first quarter, and the outlook for the second quarter is very positive. But these are the numbers. I mean, we have to look at some of the intangible things like business confidence as well. I mean, what are you hearing? What are you seeing from the business community in terms of, their confidence that we will continue to see this steady growth?
I think it's industry specific, and I mean, if you are an entrepreneur operating in one of the key areas for Chinese economic growth, as indicated earlier, AI, biomedicine, and green tech, for example, then I think you're in a position where you can be extremely confident about the support you're going to receive and about the opportunities both domestically and internationally. Obviously, if you're in an industry such as the property sector or industries that depend upon new construction for their health, then it's a little bit less optimistic. So I do think it's varying by industry, but I think that generally speaking, the level of entrepreneurial enthusiasm is on the rebound, and Premier Li's speech certainly was encouraging to the delegates who were present. I might just add in addition that as an example of the outreach and global cooperation effort by China at the moment, the heads of state of both Poland and Vietnam, two very important countries in the roster of emerging economies, they were present at the forum in Dalian, and I think gave very powerful messages themselves about the opportunities they see in the global south, if I can put it that way, for economic development and cooperation with China.
And the chairman of McKinsey in China, Zhou Engai, he described China this way, and he said, China is the most competitive environment in the world, especially when it comes to innovation. Let's listen to some of that.
I think China is definitely the most competitive environment anywhere on globally. And I think for multinationals, this is the market where they face the fiercest local competition, they face the fiercest price competition, right? And they face the most rapid innovation cycle that they can see anywhere else, right? Product innovation in China, is 3 times faster than anywhere they've seen usually in the home markets.
So Andy, how is China driving innovation, and what kind of opportunities does that present, not just for China, but for the entire world?
Sure. No, I completely agree with Joe and I on this, both intellectually as well as anecdotally. So, let me start with a couple of numbers, because it really starts with smart, highly trained people. China graduates something like 3.6 million STEM graduates a year. Which is more than 4 times that of the U.S. The U.S. graduates something like 800,000. And of course, China and the U.S. are the 2 global technology leaders currently. So it all starts with talent, but I think it also starts with government policy as well. So without the right policies, and I touched on this earlier, that I think China approaches these problems from a rational, scientific perspective, what I would characterize as advanced conceptual thinking, that develops policies that can be applied across a broad and diverse country. So with that in place, I think this provides fertile ground for entrepreneurs to flourish. I think the other aspect that Joe and I talked about the ferociously competitive environment in China is absolutely correct. I think of it as China is like a high-gravity planet. And if you adapt and can thrive here, you can certainly do well in lower gravity environments in other parts of the world. And I think we've seen this take place with electric vehicles, of course, solar panels, even areas that once investors around the world thought it would be impossible for China to succeed in, and that is consumer-facing cultural products. And here I'm talking, of course, about TikTok, which has dominated markets around the world, most impressively, I think, in the United States. So when we look at all of these factors together, I think that China is incredibly well positioned. I want to make one other quick point about this, too, to share the importance of digital infrastructure, in particular 5G. So to use an example that I think many for the people in our audience that are in the U.S. might appreciate, when the U.S. built out its interstate highway system under President Eisenhower, this not only drove economic growth directly by making it easier, cheaper, faster for people and goods to be moved around the country, but it also opened up vast new business models that no one had imagined previously, like motels instead of hotels, gas stations, strip malls, and really drove the whole suburbanization of the United States that transformed the character of the country. So I think, again, we're witnessing this investment in different kinds of infrastructure in China, high-speed rail, but also, I think, 5G that will open up vast new business models and opportunities, not just for China, but for people all around the world.
Changhua, the World Economic Forum also produced a white paper, and that white paper is called Transforming Energy Demand. And it shows that energy consumption can be reduced by almost a third, 31% is the number, by taking steps in key sectors like buildings, like construction, like industry, like transport. What can you tell us about this?
Sure. Let me put things in perspective. I think a key message that's communicated loud and clear from Dalian is that it's a quality growth, right? And what do we mean quality growth? There are a few key dimensions to define that. One is, innovation. The second one is productivity. The third one is modernization and security, as well as, sustainability. So if you put things in perspective, of course, we do need to employ all the technology possible. From an energy perspective, yes, we've been making progress in terms of improving energy efficiency. That's been very important part of the solution, and we are still facing a lot of challenges there and opportunities there. We have to adopt new technologies, particularly digitalization, automation technologies to do so. Now, related to that actually is also replace, right? We've been making efforts to substitute the fossil fuels and replace that part with the renewable energies, particularly solar and wind. And then, of course, if you look at electrification of different sectors, including buildings, mobilities there, somehow, you put all the solutions together, we are definitely making huge progress in terms of managing the energy demand. And rather than continuously to rise, to have the energy demand rising, we will be able to better manage the energy demand. In the meantime, really put the demand, supply, and the energy system that's built, on the top of renewable energy system there. That's really fascinating progress we've been made so far, and we need to continue to put all the efforts, including technology, industrial value chain, markets, financing together. And on top of that, actually, we need much stronger policy incentives as well in order to achieve the bigger agenda.
John Quelch, with the developing world still feeling the effects of the COVID pandemic, they're also struggling with servicing debt as well as inflation worries. I'm wondering, to what extent will Chinese growth be key to driving global economic growth this year?
The United States is looking pretty anemic relative to China at around about 2.5% economic growth this year, and the World Bank forecast for 2025 is not encouraging with respect to U.S. economic growth. It'll be lower, according to the World Bank, than this year's figure. So China's role in terms of driving global economic growth, as Einar indicated earlier, China accounts for 30+% of economic growth each year in the world. That's going to continue, probably be even higher in 2025, given the sluggish recovery in the US. So when you are a country in the global south and you are looking at who to collaborate with, who is going to help you drive your own economy forward, it's not surprising that there is a considerable interest in China. And every day, practically, in Beijing, we see another political leader from another country from the global south visiting to learn how they can cooperate for the benefit of their economy and their people with China.
Okay, and that is where we have to leave it. Thank you to all of you for being with us on the show. That's it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C.